What's going on, YouTube? I know I missed last week. I apologize for my loyal three total viewers um, who were missing out on my video last week. I've been sick for the last week, which now that that's an excuse to not put out a video, um, I just honestly I didn't really know what to talk about. Didn't have a specific topic in mind to speak on, and I just was like, well, I don't know, I'm not gonna put out a video about nothing. But being sick over the last week gave me an idea of something to talk about, which in previous videos I've talked about outside variables, variables outside of the gym that you can control, which includes your nutrition, your hydration, sleep, things like that, workload, stress. Now, one of those, a variable outside of the gym that you can't necessarily control or is more difficult to control is getting sick, right? So, what do you do when you get sick? So a lot of people have different views on this and have, say different things. Personally, I don't recommend that you pull back too much unless you're very sick. So, for example, I was, I had like a cold. I didn't have like some kind of serious respiratory infection or anything like that. So, when I got sick, I kept training as normal. I didn't take off any days. I didn't change anything about my workouts. All I did is I made sure that I was extra hydrated. I ate a little bit extra calories on average every day, mostly from carbs. Not that that's necessarily important. Just as something to kind of help my body have a little bit more energy and fuel to use to help fight the sickness. And I just really stayed on top of my hydration more than anything. For me, when I get sick, I noticed that I definitely tend to get dehydrated more quickly on average. So I had hydration supplements like Liquid IV. I just was drinking a lot of fluids. And ultimately, I ended up not really feeling much worse in the gym for most of my sessions. Did I notice on my top sets that I did feel like maybe a little bit weaker? Yeah, a little bit, but not significantly. I'm not talking, we're not talking huge jumps. We're talking very small differences. For example, last week I did a deadlift double with 540 pounds, and to be honest, I think it only moved a little bit slower on the second rep than I would have imagined it would have moved if I had been feeling healthy. I would not have loaded more weight if I had felt good. I would not have done anything different if I had felt, 100% healthy. So, ultimately, I felt fine. Even though I was definitely noticeably sick, nothing was really terribly impacted. Now, if I were really sick, like let's say that I had some kind of respiratory infection and I was having trouble breathing and I had 100-degree fever, 101-degree fever, let's say, yeah, I would recommend taking some time off. Don't go to the gym the day of. Definitely don't go to the gym the next day. I would personally, say wait until at least your fever breaks and you start feeling like able to move again, right? But even then, I would say you should still be taking care of the variables that you can control, right? Like a lot of people, when they get really sick, they say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to worry about what I'm eating while I'm sick. I'm not going to worry about my sleep while I'm sick. I'm just gonna try to, lay around and play video games, or just lay in bed and be sick. Um, First thing, you should definitely still be taking care of your nutrition. That can absolutely impact your recovery. Um, if you are not getting enough food, you're not really getting, which I know that can, your appetite can be impacted by sickness. And I'm not saying that you should be like force feeding 4,000 calories per day while you're sick. However, I do think you should be trying to still hit your protein goals, and you should still be trying to hit somewhere close to your maintenance calories, uh, just to at least give your body a chance to kind of fight off whatever it's fighting off, right? And also just to make you feel better, like having eating like you normally would on a normal day will help you feel normal, right? Like if you're just sitting around and eating mac and cheese and whatever gross nonsense just because you're feeling sick, like you're gonna feel more sick. I can guarantee you, like, you will feel worse than if you just ate like normal. Now, if that's what you normally eat mac and cheese and cookies and whatever stupid shit like that, then this video doesn't really apply to you. and you can continue doing as you wish. But as a general rule of thumb, if you're trying to get better, you should do things that will help you get there. You should also be trying to make sure that you still get as much sleep as you can. And honestly, moving around, like just getting up and walking, or maybe going into a pool if you've got that available to you, just something to get your blood moving, just to move around a little bit, is probably going to help you start to feel better sooner, right? I'm not, if you've got, again, super high fever and you can't move, you've got serious muscle pains or like nerve pains, obviously rest, recover. But if you're if you're coming back, you're trying to get to a point where you can go back to the gym soon, walking, moving around, getting your steps in will help you get there. Yeah, anyway, so that's what I recommend for when you're sick. Also, I'd recommend that you take steps to avoid getting sick in the first place, because there are things that you can do to prevent that, right? So for example, if it's the season for you, right? Like for this area, Florida, Sarasota, Florida, we get snowbirds that come in during the winter, right? And even though our weather is relatively unchanged, it's still hot outside. We're not, anymore. We're not at any higher risk of getting sick because of the temperature, unlike people up north. We just have a lot more people down here because northerners come down here and they bring their sickness and their disease. And then also, like, school starts up again after Christmas, yada, yada, yada. So it's flu season. And if you know that it's flu season, you can go out of your way to make sure you're taking vitamin C, you're staying hydrated, you're avoiding people who are sick, you get your flu shots, whatever, stuff like that. And then that way you avoid, are more likely to avoid getting sick at all in the first place. Or if you're someone who is getting sick, you start to feel it coming on, taking medicine to help rush that process along. Like when I first noticed that my nose was starting to run, before I started really feeling sick, just was starting to get some of like the head cold symptoms, I started taking that Zicam stuff so that I hopefully would get through this process more quickly. And I'm glad I did, because now I'm pretty much all better. And then outside of getting sick, like other outside variables that are a little bit more difficult to control, like getting hurt outside of the gym. As an example, I was at a rock climbing gym this weekend, and I took a kind of nasty fall, and I ended up scraping up my leg and bruising it. I'll put a picture here so you can see that. Which didn't really like have a terrible impact on me, but in the moment I was afraid that it would have an impact on me. So the first thing, the most important thing, is you should probably just not do stupid stuff like that. Like, if you are serious about powerlifting or bodybuilding or whatever it is, I would recommend that you probably should avoid doing things like that. You shouldn't go sprinting without, being very warm or conditioned to sprint. You shouldn't, go do gymnastics or jujitsu or whatever. And if you're gonna go do something like rock climbing, you should be very careful and not do anything that you think could potentially lead you to injure yourself. I'm glad that I didn't like actually injure myself and I just got bruised and scraped. But it definitely makes you think like, okay, well, that could have been worse than it was, and I would be pretty miserable if it was worse, than it is. I maybe wouldn't have been able to squat yesterday. I would have been upset at the setback. So overall, just avoiding that in general is probably a good idea. Now, if something like that does happen, like let's say that like for myself, I had the little bruise, or I shouldn't say little, large bruise plus scraping on my knee, like making sure that going into training you're aware of it, but also understand how it limits you, if it limits you at all. For example, myself, it didn't limit me at all. So I needed to make sure that my mentality wasn't affected by what was going on down there. I needed to make sure that I was going in confident, because it really didn't affect me and it shouldn't have affected me. If you do have something that is going to affect you, you also need to understand how it's going to limit you, and you need to make sure that you don't push too hard or re-aggravate it, and thus send yourself even further back, send your progress even further back, so you can continue moving forward rather than backwards. Anyway, I don't know how long I've been talking, probably not too terribly long, but I'll go on to talk about my lifts from last week. Let's see, had a 515 set of 4 on squat, which I think moved pretty well. And this is setting me up for a set of 4 with 550, which I actually just hit yesterday. I'll include that in next week's video though. But yeah, squat's coming along great, and I'm glad to see that. Hopefully I will be hitting a big triple next block, and I think it'll be exciting. For deadlift, as I mentioned before, 540 double, and this is kind of around the start of when I got sick, so I was afraid I was gonna be more affected than I was, but as you can see from the video, moved pretty well. I can't really complain about that too much. And then bench, I did 375 for a single. As you can see, it was kind of touch and go. Definitely rushed, but I felt strong, so it gives me confidence to attempt 395. And yeah, I think I will hit 395 this block, and I'll be pretty happy with that. Anyway, that's the video. If you guys liked it, give me a thumbs up, and I'll catch you in the next one.